When her phone buzzed with a message from her ex, she felt the old emotions stir: hope, doubt, and the pain of a love that once was. She turned to me, her voice trembling, confessing she wanted to give him another chance. But love is never simple. Trust is fragile, and the past carries shadows. I told her, trust your heart but stay wise. This is the story of second chances, hard truths, and the battle between hope and caution that tests the limits of love. My name is Sarah, and I never thought I would be here again. At the crossroads of love and heartbreak, staring down the ghosts of a past I had tried so hard to bury. But life has a funny way of testing us when we least expect it, throwing us back into the storm just as we think the skies have cleared. It started with a simple buzz on my phone. A message from a number I hadn't saved, an unknown caller. Yet I knew whose name would appear when I unlocked it. My ex, Jake. My heart stuttered, a mix of excitement and terror flooding through me. Why now? After all these months, after moving on, after rebuilding my life brick by brick, why did he suddenly appear in my world? I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling, my mind racing through memories. Some warm and golden, others sharp with pain. Our breakup had been messy, the kind that leaves scars that don't quite heal, especially when love and anger collide in equal measure. I knew what he might want. To come back, to say sorry, to rewrite the past. The idea tangled with the part of me that still remembered the good times, the laughter, the dreams whispered late at night, the promise of forever. But there was another part, the part that remembered the fights, the silence, the nights spent crying alone. The part that remembered the weight of disappointment and unmet expectations. I felt lost. And then I turned to my best friend, the one person who had seen me through every up and down, the one who always told me the truth even when it hurt. She said, my ex texted. I want to give him another chance. I whispered, voice barely steady. She looked at me, her eyes full of concern and strength. And what do you want? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. A part of me wants to believe, to hope, but another part is screaming not to go back. She nodded slowly. Love is never simple, Sarah. You have to trust your heart, but stay wise. Don't let hope blind you to the truth. Her words settled around me like a shield against the storm inside. Over the next few days, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Jake's messages came. Charming, remorseful, pleading. Each one pulled me in and pushed me away. I spent hours revisiting old photos and conversations, trying to decide if the man who reached out now was the same one I once loved or merely a reflection of what I wished he could be. I asked myself, could people really change? Did love deserve a second chance? Or was I risking my heart again for a dream that might never come true? I talked to friends, seeking advice, but the answers weren't simple. Follow your heart, they said. Don't go back to pain, others warned. The nights felt longest during this storm of uncertainty, the silence in my room filled with questions without answers. And through it all, my best friend remained my anchor, reminding me to look beyond the messages to what actions might truly mean. This was the beginning of a journey, one where I would have to confront my fears, hopes, and the delicate line between love and self-preservation. I was standing on the edge of a choice that could change everything. Would I step forward into the past or protect the future I was building? Only time would tell. The days after Jake's first message were like living in a storm. One minute, I felt swept away by memories of laughter and closeness. The next, I was drowning in the shadows of hurt and broken promises. The pull was magnetic and terrifying all at once. Jake's texts poured in steadily, each carefully crafted to sound thoughtful and sincere. I've changed, one read. I miss you more than I ever thought possible. Another. Can we meet? I just want a chance to show you the man I am now. The lines blurred between hope and hesitation. I found myself craving his presence, the familiarity, the old rhythm of conversations long past. But every time I slipped closer to believing, a whisper in my mind reminded me why he left. He wasn't just my ex. He was the man who had hurt me deeply. Memories of harsh words, nights waiting alone for him to come home, the silence that stretched for days after fights. These weren't shadows easily erased by sweet texts. I called my best friend, her voice steady over the line, grounding me. Remember how you felt when you left him? The pain that pushed you away? That's the truth you can't forget. Her reminder hit hard. I wanted to believe in the new Jake, the man behind the apologies and promises. But the old Jake had shaped so much of my pain. Could hope be enough to overcome that? The more I dwelt on this, the more confused I became. I spent nights scrolling through old photos on my phone, a time capsule of smiles, hugs, and dreams we once shared. I watched videos of us dancing in the rain, whispering secrets, and plotting futures that never came to be. Tears fell freely, a bittersweet mixture of love and loss. I began to question the people around me too. Was I alone in my doubts, or was everyone wrestling with the same fears when love toes the line between past and future? One afternoon, I met Jake in a crowded cafe. I wanted to see him, to look into his eyes and feel if the spark was still there, or if it was just a flicker of memory. He was different, more confident maybe, or more guarded. We talked cautiously, sipping coffee and navigating the terrain of what was and what might be. He shared stories of the changes he'd made. Therapy, new routines, efforts to grow. He confessed regrets and fears. I felt tears sting my eyes, torn between empathy and mistrust. Could I believe this was real? Or was it just a well-rehearsed performance? Later, I confided in my best friend again, struggling to articulate the storm inside. Sometimes, love is a puzzle with pieces that don't quite fit, she said gently. You have to decide if the imperfections are worth holding on to, or if it's time to walk away. Her words haunted me, echoing long after the call ended. Days turned into weeks as I wavered between hope and caution. The promise of second chances was seductive, but the fear of repeating mistakes was overwhelming. I realized that this choice was bigger than just rekindling love. It was about trusting myself, setting boundaries, and protecting my heart. Would I be courageous enough to forgive and rebuild, or strong enough to let go forever? That question lingered as the sun set, leaving me standing on the edge of tomorrow. The more I tried to hold on to hope, the more the shadows of our past crept in, whispering warnings I couldn't ignore. Jake's return had stirred old wounds that hadn't fully healed, and suddenly, I was acutely aware of the cracks beneath the surface of his promises. Our third meeting was at a park near my apartment, a place that had once felt like ours, now heavy with memories both sweet and bitter. Jake arrived, his smile warm but eyes flickering with uncertainty. I wanted to believe in him, to see the man he said he had become, but a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. We walked slowly on a winding path, the crunch of fallen leaves beneath our feet filling the silence between words. I know I messed up, he said finally, voice low. And I don't expect you to forget everything. But I'm ready to try again if you'll let me. His honesty hit a tender spot, but I searched his face for signs of the old patterns. The impatience, the anger lurking just beneath the surface. Why now? I asked. What changed? He hesitated, looking down. I lost everything that mattered. The future we could have. I realized I was the one standing in my own way. I wanted to believe him, but the images of broken promises flashed in my mind. The nights I waited up, the fights over trust, the silence that swallowed us whole. How can I trust that this time will be different? I whispered. He reached out, his hand brushing mine with a sudden tenderness that caught me off guard. I don't expect you to trust blindly, he said. I know I have to prove it. Every day. Walking back toward the bench, I felt a flicker of hope laced with fear, a precarious balance. That night, my mind was a battlefield. Memory and longing warred with caution and past pain. The warmth of his touch, the sincerity in his eyes, they were hard to deny. Yet, the scars he left behind ran deep. I called my best friend, voice shaking as I poured out my tangled emotions. You don't have to decide now, she reminded me gently. But whatever you choose, do it for yourself, not because of guilt or pressure. Her words felt like a lifeline. The following days were a blur of text messages, phone calls, and stolen moments with Jake. He showed up differently, reliable, patient, trying, but the past haunted every step. One evening, while we sat on my couch, a sudden argument erupted over something small, a forgotten detail, a misunderstood word. The tension snapped, and for a moment, the familiar shadows loomed large. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized how fragile this new beginning was. Change wasn't a switch to flip. It was slow work, messy and raw. Jake reached out, his voice steady. I don't want to lose you again. I looked at him, torn between hope and fear. I wanted to believe in us, wanted to see the light ahead, but the darkness of what was behind kept creeping in. It was clear now, this journey would test every part of me. My courage, my heart, my wisdom. I could see love's power to heal but also its power to hurt. Would I be strong enough to navigate the unknown? Or would this second chance become a third heartbreak? As I lay awake that night, listening to the silence of my apartment, one thing was certain: the road ahead was uncertain. But I was determined to follow my heart. Wisely. After that night of tears and fragile hope, I knew nothing would be easy. The love I once had for Jake was layered with history. Hope threaded with fear, joy shadowed by pain. We were walking a tightrope, balancing between old wounds and new promises, unsure who might fall first. Jake and I decided to meet less frequently, giving ourselves time to process, to breathe. The rush of rekindled passion was now tempered by lingering doubts. Would he truly change? Would I let him in without losing myself? We spoke openly, sometimes painfully, about our past mistakes. He admitted the ways he had hurt me. His impatience, his silence when I needed answers, the selfishness that had driven wedges between us. He confessed the loneliness he felt without me and the regret that gnawed at his heart. I listened, heart aching. The man before me was trying, but was trying enough? One afternoon, Jake invited me to a quiet cafe where we first met years ago. The place overflowed with memories, the scent of coffee mingling with our whispered apologies and tentative laughter. For a moment, it felt almost like the old days, before the heartbreak. But mid-conversation, a message popped up on Jake's phone. His face tightened as he read it, an unexpected call from an old friend who, I soon learned, was a reminder of his past life, filled with people and habits he claimed to have left behind. I saw the flicker of struggle in his eyes, a battle between the past and the future. It made me wonder, how far was he willing to go to change? Was this a genuine desire for a fresh start or just a fleeting promise cloaked in words? I decided to test the waters gently. "Tell me about your plans," I said softly. "Not what you want me to hear, but what you're really doing to change." Jake took a deep breath and shared his efforts. Therapy sessions, cutting ties with toxic friends, new job commitments. He wanted to prove he wasn't the man I left, that the mistakes were lessons now guiding him. It was encouraging but still fragile. Days later, I invited him over to my apartment. No expectations, just a chance to be together without the weight of appearances. We cooked dinner, laughed over small mistakes, and shared stories. Yet, as I watched him, I noticed the restlessness beneath the surface, the subtle glances at his phone, moments of distraction. I realized that change is not an overnight gift. It's a journey paved with uncertainty. As I closed my eyes that night, I knew the choice wasn't simply about taking Jake back. It was about balance, honoring my heart while shielding it. Would I be brave enough to try again without losing myself? Could love truly transform pain into hope? Only time and wisdom would tell if this second chance was a beginning, or a beautiful, painful end. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and uncertainties. Jake's efforts were sincere, and yet the scars between us remained fresh. I found myself walking a tightrope between hope and caution, love and fear, longing and self-preservation. Every time Jake showed kindness, every time he proved he was changing, I felt a flicker of hope. But moments later, the past would reach into the present. Small incidents, ignored calls, silence when I needed reassurance, and the doubt crept back. One evening, after a particularly tense conversation about trust, I found myself standing at a crossroads. Jake wanted me to believe in us again, in the possibility of a future together untarnished by old mistakes. He promised honesty, patience, and dedication. But I wondered, was this the same path we had walked before, filled with promises that faded like shadows at dusk? That night, after Jake left, I sat alone with my thoughts. Memories and emotions twisted within me like a storm. I wanted to believe he was different. I wanted to let go of the pain. Yet I feared losing myself in the process. I reached out to my best friend once more, her voice a steady anchor. "You can't rush your heart," she said gently. "But don't lose your voice. It's okay to say no, even if it's hard." Her words gave me strength. I realized that while love might be about forgiveness and second chances, it was also about boundaries, about protecting one's spirit. The next day, I met Jake in a quiet park. The sky was a soft gray, the air cool, mirroring the uncertainty we both felt. "I want to try," he said earnestly. "But I understand if you can't jump back into this." I looked into his eyes, searching for truth, for the courage he seemed to summon when he spoke. "Trying is not enough," I said slowly. I need to see change. Not just words, but consistent actions. And I need time. He nodded, accepting the terms without resistance. For the first time, we set clear boundaries. Not just between us, but within ourselves. It was uncomfortable, raw but real. As I walked home, I felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief for claiming my space, fear for what the future held. Could love survive when tested by time, trust, and trial? Or was I simply delaying an inevitable heartbreak? I realized that the answer wasn't in Jake's promises or my wishes. It was in what we did each day to rebuild or let go. And that was the hardest journey of all. The months stretched on, and with every day, the fragile new rhythm Jake and I created was tested. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's painstaking work, made harder by the ghosts of the past that can't be silenced. At first, Jake's efforts were genuine. He showed up on time, kept his promises, and communicated more openly than before. I wanted to believe this was the start of something new, something better. But the cracks began to show. One evening, I caught a glimpse of texting late into the night, a conversation with someone he said was an old friend. He assured me there was nothing to worry about, but his evasive tone didn't settle the suspicion growing in my heart. I started noticing other things, the way he sometimes disappeared without explanation, the half-truths about where he was, the sudden moments of defensiveness when I asked questions. The doubts I had so carefully buried began to resurface. One night, after a long day at work, I found myself staring at my phone. The message thread with Jake opened and taunting me with unanswered questions. I confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Who were you really talking to tonight? My voice was quieter than I expected, but laced with steel. He hesitated, then sighed. It was just someone from my past. Someone I'm trying to cut ties with. I could hear the hesitation in his voice. But you didn't tell me, and you wouldn't show me the messages. How am I supposed to trust that? That night, the silence between us screamed louder than words. I realized then that love, no matter how hopeful, cannot survive without trust. The following days were cold and distant. We tried to talk, to mend, but every conversation seemed to circle back to the same insecurities. I began to question if I was holding on to a dream, a what if, rather than reality. One rainy afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table, tears flowing freely. My phone buzzed again with a message from Jake. An apology, a plea to forgive, to believe. But the cracks in my heart were now deep. I picked up the phone and called my best friend, the one who had been my voice of reason throughout. I don't know if I can do this anymore, I confessed. I want to love him. I want us to work. But I'm afraid I'm just setting myself up for heartbreak. She listened, then reminded me softly, you are not responsible for changing someone else. You only owe it to yourself to find peace. Love without fear. That night, I understood the hardest choice wasn't giving up love. It was knowing when to let go of what was hurting me. The decision weighed heavily on me. To hold on to a love that had fractured so many times, or to finally let go and reclaim myself. Jake and I met one last time. A quiet corner of a familiar coffee shop. The rain streaked patterns down the windows as if echoing the turmoil inside me. He looked tired but hopeful, reaching across the table with trembling hands. I love you, he said simply. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I wanted to believe him more than anything, but the truth I had learned was harsher. I loved you too, I whispered. But love isn't enough when trust is broken. I have to think about my heart now. Tears brimmed in his eyes, but I held steady. This isn't giving up on love, I explained. It's choosing to love myself more. Walking away from him that day was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Yet as I stepped out into the damp air, a fragile kind of peace settled over me. The road ahead would be long and sometimes lonely, but it was mine. I realized that sometimes, giving someone another chance means giving yourself the chance to heal, to grow, and to find a love that doesn't make you question your worth. That message from Jake had shaken my world, but it also sparked my awakening. Now I was ready to trust my heart. Not blindly, but wisely.